Hello and welcome to the Goal is AFL podcast. This is round 7 of the AFL season. My name is Harrison. I'm here with Caleb. And first of all, I do want to acknowledge that today and this weekend was Anzac Day. So a huge, tribute to all of the soldiers that have fought for us and our country and our rights and the freedom that we enjoy today. So I wanted to give a special thanks to all of the soldiers that have fought and are currently still fighting for our country and for freedom all around the world, no matter where they are. Caleb, this is a football podcast, so with that out of the way, how was your football watching experience this week?
Yeah, it was good. I didn't get to see a lot of the games, but the games I did see definitely had a lot to chew on. I am very surprised by some of the results, and then the table, as a result of the results this weekend, have certainly become defining for a lot of teams. And most notably Carlton, who have obviously got off to a poor start. They're now starting to get the cogs turning.
Spoilers.
Melbourne have now won 2 in a row. And then obviously Brisbane bouncing back after a dismal defeat last week. So, yeah, lots of exciting football. Some beautiful spectacle, taking advantage of the Anzac Day round. And I'm just glad that footy has been able to celebrate a round like this with as minimal controversy as possible.
And another week of new uniforms too. That was a somewhat positive and interesting aspect of the teams often, putting together some good uniforms, which was pretty cool to see. And the first game that was up on this Anzac weekend was Melbourne versus Richmond. And as you can see, Melbourne got their second win of the season, defeating the 2-win Richmond Tigers 83-63. This was a pretty bad game. I'm not going to lie. It wasn't exactly riveting. It was Melbourne pretty much from the beginning. Richmond had a little bit of a purple patch in the second quarter, but yeah, it was pretty much Melbourne, which was an interesting sign because Melbourne, obviously have not been a great team this year already, but seeing them bounce back, getting these wins under their young players' belts is always very, very good for their development. How did you see this game to kick off our weekend?
Well, because these two teams are towards the bottom of the table, it really was a bit of a coin flip in terms of who could have won this game. Because Melbourne have the superior players and a coach that's been around for much longer, it's an expectation, I would say, that they should have won this game and won it more comfortably than they did. But a 20-point margin is nothing to sniff about because of how poor they have been. And, yeah, I'm not surprised at all. But for this being the Thursday night opener to the Anzac Day round was certainly not ideal from a scheduling perspective. I don't think anyone would have anticipated Melbourne to be this far down the table and not headlining the AFL as they have been in the last couple of years.
I'm just trying to think, has there been a Thursday besides the only Thursday night game that I feel hasn't been to the MCG, someone might fact check me, but the only one I can remember is the Lions game versus Collingwood.
Geelong, right? Oh, yeah.
No, it's Collingwood, the Easter. So, yeah, interesting that they continue to put it. I mean, obviously they're going to put it at the MCG, but to put these two teams there was a little bit. Don't know if that was probably the best kickoff, like you said. Not really a big fan of that. But anyway, it gave us a game that was somewhat okay, not a great game, and we're probably going to move on pretty quickly because both of these teams are going to finish very low on the bottom of the ladder. And there are far more interesting results that happened, especially on actual Anzac Day, the traditional clash between the Magpies and the Bombers. The Magpies getting up in the end. It was a little bit of a tight game towards halftime, but once that kind of interval happened, Collingwood just kind of pulled away. And that's been a little bit of the theme, I feel, in their games so far, in their wins. They've kind of stuck around for a little bit and then just at the end, they just kind of take off. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this was a disappointing final score to witness because I've had a lot higher expectations of Melbourne, of Essendon this season. And like you said, they just couldn't quite stay in the contest the whole time. And the Magpies have done what they have always done and have kicked away and kept their opposition at arm's distance. And I'm not surprised at all. The biggest headline coming out of this game was, of course, Nick Dacos captaining the side. What is one of the biggest days in the footy calendar year. So for him personally, I'm sure that would have been a monumental achievement for his family. And then obviously the fact that they were able to win it by 41 points is a big statement again for the Magpies this season, because we've mentioned it a couple times already, but they came off a premiership hangover and they look like they mean business again this season.
Yeah.
So they currently sit towards the top of the table, and
They are
rightfully
top.
so. And yeah, the Bombers, I'm just, again, disappointed. There's still enough there for them to do better, but with a couple injuries, they might not be reaching the heights that I expected of them this season.
I know. Yeah, I knew it was going to come back to that for our preseason predictions. But yeah, Essendon definitely pushed a little bit harder than we thought they would. But yeah, they just don't have the class to be able to keep up with the likes of Collingwood. And yeah, I just think that as much as I hate to say it, Dacos played a good game, and I think our feelings about Nick Dacos and Collingwood are, pretty well known. But you do have to tip your cap when they do play very well. And this was one of those games where, you'd usually expect Essendon to be a little bit more up for these sort of games. And the last couple of years, they really have been. But this game, they definitely didn't show up in the second half.
Yeah, this is a game I would love to go to, just to be at the MCG, to just witness the atmosphere. So hopefully when Essendon get their shit together and are actually competing towards the top end of the table, it might be a good time to go. Full sellout, great close encounter. That's what you want from an Anzac Day fixture.
Or you could just go when both teams are terrible. So
you
might be waiting.
Football's not as good.
Exactly, that's true. But there was also one other game on the Friday night, which was the Dockers defeating the Adelaide Crows, which the Adelaide Crows are now, I think that's 3 losses in the last 4 games. So they're definitely not on a great winning streak. The Dockers have pushed themselves higher up the ladder, and this win was, it was a good kind of spectacle, especially being on Anzac Day. It's good to see Perth having a somewhat of a primetime game. They often get shoved to the graveyard shift of, Sunday night afternoon or Sunday afternoon football, but it was good to see Freo getting a bit of a limelight, so to speak, being like a Channel 7 game, a bit of a primetime game. It might be one of their first primetime games they've had for a long time. So I was excited to see that for Freo, and also a little bit frustrated if you're a Freo fan. I was thinking that how did we lose to Melbourne and then beat Adelaide the next week? Like, that's got to be so frustrating. It's one of those teams that you just scratch your head about, and they have such good players. They have good recruits this year, and they just can't seem to put it together against every team that they probably should be beating, like Melbourne last week. But on the Adelaide side, I think that, they had a very strong start. They've had a little bit of a slip up in the last few weeks. So where do you see both of these teams finishing now that you've seen this result?
Well, the Crows had a huge opportunity to make a statement with this game. Going over to the West and winning would have, I think, opened the eyes of a lot of footy fans, because they have been off to a strong start so far this season. And they're coming up against teams now where they're going to be fighting for similar places on the table. And I very much so anticipate both the Dockers and Adelaide to be just trying to get into the top 8. So the fact that Adelaide didn't get the 4 points, I think is, again, probably resetting our expectations a little bit, because Fremantle definitely have enough quality at their disposal. The question is are they able to be consistent? So far, the answer to that is no. Moving forward, could it be yes? Who knows? That remains to be seen.
Yeah. Yeah, it would, as I said, it would be very frustrating if I was a fan. Just like, why can't we play like this every week? But I think that I think that they'll end up where we thought they would end up, which is fighting for a spot in the 7th, 8th, 9th, something like that spot. They're a good team, but I don't think they're good enough. And the same could be said about Adelaide at this point. People were locking them into the top 8, which I thought was ridiculous. After their strong start, and then they had a loss to the Gold Coast. But yeah, I see both of these teams finishing where we thought they were, which was 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th maybe. So
yeah, pretty much.
It was a good game, good finish to our Anzac Day, and then we had the Marvel Stadium game, which was the reigning premiers, the Brisbane Lions, defeating St Kilda 118-73 in a pretty convincing game, to be honest. Like, the Lions pretty much led from start to finish. They had a great first quarter, a great second quarter. St Kilda, obviously, as you can see, pulled it back a little bit in the third, but then, yeah, the Lions just pulled away and just really showed some determination, which I thought they would. I think I said at the start of the game, I was like, Lions will win this. Like this is the kind of game that under Fagan in the last 3 or 4 years, they've come back and they've won these games. They don't often lose 2 in a row. And playing at Marvel, where they like playing, some of the players are obviously very fired up. And I think that this was another statement and a great win to take the Lions to 6-1.
Yeah, this was a great bounce back victory. The midfield really ran the engine for the majority of this game. St Kilda had a few flurries, but for the most part, they are so far and away the elites level. It's not even funny. Ross Lyon has so many questions that he needs to find answers to. And the biggest being their defensive setup, because they have so many weaknesses in that area that they need to adjust, because you have players on the Brisbane side like Logan Morris and Eric Hitwood who were just getting up for big marks and, allowing players in the forward 50 like Zach Bailey to pick up the crumbs and score goals.
Yeah. Bailey was
just
great.
Constantly look deadly. Yeah. And Lockie Neal has to be said.
3 votes, Lockie Neal.
Yeah, I've always said that he's definitely sort of on the tail end of his career. He's definitely not going to hit the heights that he has when he was winning those Brownlow medals. But against these sort of teams that are so clearly weaker than us, that's his opportunity to show not only the Brisbane Lions fans, but the footy community that he still got it and that he can have longevity in the game, like a player like Travis Boak or Paddy Dangerfield, these type of characters. And the fact that he came up with a couple goals, got plenty of disposals, and helped the team propel forward constantly was great to see. So I was very impressed by the Lions bouncing back. The only thing I'm concerned about is Charlie Cameron. He hasn't scored in the last 3 games, and he looks pretty shocking.
He had 4 behinds. Man.
Yeah.
And some of them were bad misses. I mean, you said Lockie Neal, 31 disposals, 3 goals, incredible performance from him. Zach Bailey, 3 goals as well, 24 disposals. I just looked at the stats and the top 10 fantasy points. The only player who was actually at the top of the fantasy points was Nasiah Wanganeen-Millera, and the rest of them in the top 10 were all Lions players. So that kind of tells you a little bit of the dominance of the Lions. Eric Hitwood, 4 goals, did pretty well. I think he kicked all 4 on his right foot, which has never, ever happened, I can guarantee.
Yeah, I think so.
They're all like snaps, and I was just like, this is crazy. What is going on here?
He's such a bipolar player, man. Some days he's so good, other days he's so bad. Yeah. It's just, it's hard to predict what you're going to get from him.
We need him I couldn't agree more. To be that player. We need him to be kicking at least 2 goals a game. We need him to stand up. We need our smalls to, crumb the contest that he's making with the marking contest. So it's definitely needed, and I think it's really awesome to see him coming into form like that. So again, the Lions having a good win against St Kilda. St Kilda, who started the year a little bit, with a flurry, have kind of come back down to earth. And so we'll see where they'll probably will end up where we think they were, which was around the 10th, 11th, 12th sort of spot, missing out on the finals. But the Lions looking good, sitting tight at the top with Collingwood on the same amount of points, just below in second spot on percentage. The next game we had was the Port Adelaide Power defeating the 1-win North Melbourne Kangaroos, 97-88. A little bit more of a competitive game that North fans kind of wanted to see, but Port, just were too good. And I think the demise of Port Adelaide was premature, so if to say the least. I think that they people were writing them off, kind of like people were writing off like Carlton. People were writing in Adelaide. It's too early, I feel. We're only at round 7, for goodness sakes. Like, we are way too close to the start of the season to be thinking about finals. So what was your take on this one, Caleb? This was I didn't get to watch a lot of this game, so I'm going to hold it over to you.
Well, I was going to say, I'm of the opinion that you can't really make a judgment on any league table in any long-form competition like this until about the round 8 to round 10 mark. So we're nearly there in terms of getting a good sense of what these teams are capable of. But the fact that it ended up being 9 points is a huge red flag from a Port Adelaide perspective. Like you look at that quarter breakdown, the amount of points that Port Adelaide were in front by for the first 3 quarters is very healthy. You'd be comfortable if you're a Port Adelaide fan watching that game unfold. But the fact that it ended up being so close towards the end and on that worm, you can see it just trickle down quite sharply is, again, a worry for Ken Hinkley's men, because North Melbourne's one of those teams that at home they should be putting away very, very swiftly and decisively. So the fact that Port Adelaide are not that team that are everyone's looking at and being like, whoa, watch out for Port Adelaide. Yeah, it's a big worry for them. But yeah, North Melbourne, they're still in that transitional period. Alistair Clarkson is still working on his players. I don't know. It's really tough to make a judgment on what they are going to be capable of this season. But it's certainly going to be towards the bottom.
Yeah. I think you're right. And I hope that they get a few more wins, but I'm not very confident, to be honest, after this start. They're in games sometimes, but they just can't put 4 quarters together in any sort of meaningful way. We'll move on to our next game of the round, which is the game at Manuka Oval, the first game at Manuka Oval this year. The Giants, who call that stadium their sort of secondary home, they got defeated pretty soundly by 32 points by the Western Bulldogs, who, continue their bipolar ways of winning well.
This is another statement win.
Yeah, another statement win, and they're getting some players back, and watch out for the doggies. I think that they had some great performances from the guys like James Harms, who had 4 goals. You had Tim English leading the way in the ruck. All of these guys, sort of their stars, were stepping up. Tom Liberatore, and they don't necessarily need Bontempelli to have 30 disposals and still win. So I think that in a weird way, them having to live without their superstars for a little bit has maybe made them stronger. You can see on that worm that they just pulled away with the class in the third quarter there. So, yeah, just back to that point, I think that it's not odd. It's interesting that they went for so long without their star players, and now they've got them back, or some of them back. It could have made them stronger because they've had to learn how to play without them. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. But yeah, no, I'm surprised looking at that worm how close it was, because these two teams again both have lots to show off in terms of quality.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Bulldogs, man, like after what I saw when they versed the Lions at Gather Round, and to see them again come up against a team that is pushing towards the top end of the table is mighty impressive. And they play a good, decent brand of football. So I think I predicted that they would win last week, and I'm not very good with my predictions. So I'm happy that the Bulldogs have beat GWS, because I don't like them at all.
Yeah, I can tell. But I think that the Battle of the West was won by the Bulldogs in this one, and GWS 4-3. So are the Bulldogs at 4-3. If you had told me who would be happier at this point being 4-3, I'd probably say the Bulldogs. This pushes the Bulldogs up into the top 8. GWS, who do they have next week? GWS have Sydney next week, so it's a Sydney derby next week. So that'll be an exciting game.
That's another huge game. With Sydney on Struggle Street, that'll be big.
We'll get on to Sydney in a moment. I think that actually, we'll talk about them now because they're the next team, and that was the game down at People's First Stadium on the Gold Coast, where we had the Gold Coast Suns defeating Sydney 117-79. Now, this was a crazy game. This was a back and forth affair for a little bit. Like right at the start, the Swans kicked away. They had a decent lead, and then bam, the Suns just kicked 12 goals straight. They absolutely demolished them in that third quarter. That was crazy display. Ben King now leading the Coleman medal. That was a crazy sequence. And if you're a Suns fan, man, you got to be pretty happy about this, because that was a pretty bad first half, but then that turnaround. The thing that struck me about the Suns is just their physicality, and also the fact that they have just really hungry players. They have guys who are veterans. They don't have a lot of rookies. They're actually a rather old team. They're not super young. They have seasoned guys, and they're really hungry. A lot of guys are on their second, third club, and they're really hungry and they want to play together. And I think that's a perfect kind of Damien Hardwick kind of team. So they got good defenders. They got big, tall
Yes.
forwards.
Yeah.
They look dangerous, and this sets up an absolutely incredible game on Sunday night next week.
Oh, couldn't agree more. Looking at that worm, it's a great visualization of what this game was. It
Yep.
totally was a pendulum shift. And Sydney have, again, so many players that should be kicking away when they get the momentum moving in their favor. But for some reason,
Yep.
coming up to the north, coming up further north, up into Queensland, they just weren't able to deal with the heat, both
Yep. It was hot.
literally and
Yeah.
yeah, it's a big concern for Dean Cox's men. And Damien Hardwick just got the tactical nuance right in this game because he was able to rev his players up in a way that was truly commendable. Because from what I watched of this game, seeing players like Matt Rao just get stuck in, Rioli coming off halfback, scoring a goal, and then they've obviously got Ben King up forward who, had a decent season last, but he's actually looking pretty formidable and could be a star player for them this season. And my prediction of them being in the top 8 this season is now looking more than likely, and also setting up a Q clash with Brisbane next week, which is going to be arguably one of the biggest spectacles since this team has come into the competition, because both Brisbane and the Gold Coast have been in the shitter, for lack of a better term, for many, many years. Brisbane have now catapulted back up to the glory days, but Gold Coast has always been stuck in the mud. Now that they've got Damien Hardwick, who is a seasoned winner, who knows how to do it, I think now is the time. The year of the sun is here, and I just absolutely love listening to their team song when they win. It's an absolute banger. I love it, and I cannot wait for next week. It's going to be so epic.
Yeah. I think this is definitely this is definitely going to be the game that of the round. I'm going to say that's what I was trying to say before I stuttered like an idiot there. But I also think that this is, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm very, very confident in saying that this would be the highest win total for both of these teams combined for a Q clash. Does that feel right? Like I can't think of a game that's had both of these teams in a better position on the ladder. Like this is going to be 1 versus 3. No, 2 versus 3. Yeah, 2 versus 3. Like, this is going to be the highest position that both of these teams have been on when they've faced each other, which is great.
And if Gold Coast do somehow win next week, it's going to be like a holy shit. Like, everyone in Melbourne's going to be freaking out. What's a team not from Victoria doing this good for?
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of great media statements that'll come from it. And Brisbane, again, got to step up. We've got to win. It's as simple as that. You got to, just how winning. South Australia and WA, when they have their big rivalry, interstate rivalries, it's about showing who's boss, who's on top, who's top dog. And if the Lions want to remain king of the jungle, they've got to put the Suns away and make sure that on Saturday night, whatever the game is, that the sun is not shining.
I really, really hope they don't. We'll move on to our next game, which was the middle game of this Sunday afternoon, and this was Carlton. On the bounce, the Baggers, the Blue Boys are back, and they have beaten Geelong 94-76. And man, this was a wild game. Carlton pretty much led the entire game, but Geelong made it pretty interesting around the 3-quarter mark, and then right towards the end of the game, it was a little bit of a tense game there. But the Carlton just had the class to kind of keep them away in front of a massive crowd at the MCG. The Blues, 3 in a row. I know they've beaten like some pretty lackluster teams like West Coast, but Geelong, that's a big game. That's a big win, and I think that this is going to give the Carlton fans some huge like impetus to be like, yep, we're back. And I think that why not them? You know what I mean? Like they're right in it right now, and that's the thing with the AFL, and that's the thing with early season stuff. People were writing them off like they're not even going to make finals. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, it's 6 rounds, it's 7 rounds. Like, there is so much more football to play. And I think that Carlton has shown that they can keep up with the best teams. Yeah,
I agree with that. Coming into this season, I would have predicted that both these teams would have been towards the very top end. And I'm glad that this game delivered what we expected from these two teams. It had a finals-like mentality. It had the tension and the escalation and the drama of what you would expect from a finals game in September. And the fact that, I think it was 60 odd thousand, it felt like the G was packed right to the rafters. And from an atmosphere perspective, that's exactly what you want with these big, heavy hitters coming to clashes. And the fact that it was this close towards the end is, again, a testament to Chris Scott's men, because they had lots of opportunities where they could have just given up and said the Blues have got us at arm's distance here and there's no room for recovery. And yet they didn't allow that to seep into their game. They maintained that intensity and they constantly threw that fishing line out and were reeling Carlton in. But even though, if we continue with this analogy, Carlton were on the hook, just as they were about to get reeled into the boat, they just got off and they were able to kick away and get that decisive goal right at the very end. And the Blues, again, 3 in a row against some teams that they should be winning, but again, Geelong are no team that they should be not celebrating against. So I think this was a really, really good game for them in terms of mentality and proving to the fans, but also the footy community, that they are an outfit that has some real chops and can compete with the best.
Yeah, you had Bailey Smith having a great game. You had Patrick Cripps having a great game. You had Harry Mackay, just some of the stars that kind of stood up. And this game was a game of stars. And obviously, like you said, finals atmosphere deserved that big stage of the MCG. That was an exciting game. We'll move on to the last game, which was a little bit less exciting, which was the Hawks winning at Marvel Stadium against the Eagles, 124-74. Hawks pretty much just dominated this entire game, bouncing back from 2 straight losses. The Eagles, I'm not going to say that this is the worst that they've been in the last 5 years since their 2018 premiership, but this is pretty bad. This is bad. If you're an Eagles fan, where are you going? What are you doing from here? This is...
Not to the games, that's for sure.
Man.
It's a pretty empty stadium, man.
It's just... Well, I mean, they're at Marvel, but yeah, when they go...
Yeah, I know, but still.
I mean, you're a premier team in a big market in Perth, and man, I don't know about this. I'm going to have to ask my brother, who is a West Coast fan, even though he probably won't want to talk about it at all. But man, you got to be pretty unhappy with how this is looking, because what's the future? Just constantly tanking for draft picks and then going through this process again? Anyway.
Well, the biggest problem is with that strategy is you pick up great players in the draft like Harley Reid.
Yeah.
And if you're still not good, you're not going to keep them happy. And when a bigger club comes along with a nice paycheck,
a Victorian club,
it's how are you going to keep them?
Yeah, Victorian club.
Again, this is a testament to the Gold Coast Suns, because they've had a few young players over the years that they've been able to retain through this rebuild. And once they got the coach that was able to get it all to click, they're now starting to look like a comprehensive outfit.
Yeah.
Can the Eagles do that? I really don't know. I'm not sure if their coach has got the answers to the questions that the fans are asking. This game, I had it on the background. I expected the Hawks to win comfortably. It wasn't one that I needed to forensically analyze. We all knew that Hawthorn was going to win this comfortably. Yeah. And at Marvel Stadium, across the pond from the MCG, where the more interesting game was, it is what it is. The Hawks are good. The Eagles are just simply not.
Well said. This was definitely a background game. That kind of leads us to looking at the ladder, where you've currently got Collingwood, Brisbane, Gold Coast. Look at that matchup. Brisbane, Gold Coast next week. That's going to be awesome. Hawks up there, 5-2. They are sitting just above Adelaide, who are at 4-3. Then you got 4 teams there at 4-3 in Adelaide, GWS, Cats, and Bulldogs. 3 of those teams coming off losses. So still, you're having top 8 teams losing, which, at this time of the year is not to be it's not unexpected, but yeah, you'd expect that a couple of those teams would have actually, like to have win those games. Like Geelong, they probably thought that they could have beaten Carlton and solidified their spot, but now they're kind of teetering on that edge of dropping out of the top 8. And then if you look a little bit further down the ladder, you have Freo, who obviously won but didn't crack into the top 8 at the end of the round. Port, again, won. Carlton, again, won. Still not in the top 8. You've then got Essendon, St Kilda, Swans, who all lost down there 11, 12, 13, 14. And then the bottom of the ladder, which is pretty much going to be the cellar dwellers of the year. Melbourne, Richmond, North and West Coast. It's so crazy to see Sydney there sitting at 8th. eight points from 7 games. It's just wild. 14th
That
spot
is pretty
Sydney.
wild.
Would never have thought that you'd see the grand finalists from last year there. So that's just a crazy stat. Crazy graphic. And yeah, if you're a Swans fan, whew,
And it's funny too because the teams that are in around that area,
yeah,
we've all said they've been not that very. They haven't been good this season. They've played poorly. They've lost when they've deserved to lose. Yet Sydney have been the complete opposite of that. They've played good football. They've had sparks where they've looked like a winning and defined team.
yeah,
And yet they just haven't won the games,
yeah,
just like they did against Gold Coast.
yeah.
And, 14th, that's not where anyone would have expected them at this time of year.
Not at all. That's it's just wild. I can't believe that. But we'll have a look at some of the games that are coming up next week, and kicking us off on Thursday. I'll get a little bit of a rapid fire sort of, how do I describe it? Like a rapid fire tip from you, just so we can kind of get a little bit of a gauge as to where you're thinking some of these games are going to go. And so first up on a Thursday night, we have Essendon versus North Melbourne. I'm going to pick... Oh, far out. I'm going to pick Essendon. I just can't tip
Essendon.
North at the moment. Yeah. I've got on Friday, you have St Kilda and Freo at Marvel Stadium. I'm going to pick St Kilda here. I just think Freo just haven't proved that they can win away as much as I think St Kilda aren't very good right now. Freo away.
Well, they've conceded 100 plus points for 3 games in a row. So St Kilda are not in a good spot. I would pick Freo.
Okay, cool. We'll see. And then Saturday we've got 4 games starting off with Western Bulldogs and Port at Mars Stadium in Ballarat, which is kind of a secondary home for the Bulldogs. This will be. I'm probably going to tip the Bulldogs. They usually win at their Ballarat game. So I'm going to tip them against Port Adelaide, even though Port are hot. And for you?
Yeah, no, I agree.
You agree? Yeah, okay.
Yep.
We've got the Crows and Carlton coming up then on 4:15 at Adelaide Oval. I'm probably going to tip Adelaide there. They definitely play better at home than away. I think that Adelaide will win that. What do you think?
That's a tough one.
Against Carlton. Carlton already had 1 win at Adelaide Oval this year.
I don't know. The fact that Carlton just beat Geelong, I think, might give them enough mentally to get over the line. But like you said, Adelaide and Adelaide, very tough to beat.
And then next you have a huge game. First place Collingwood versus 7th place Geelong at 7:30 Australian time. And man, this is going to be a huge game at the MCG. It's tough, but I really want Geelong to win, but I think Collingwood will win. It's just so hard to beat them at the MCG. Yourself?
Yeah, I agree. I think Collingwood will win, unfortunately.
We've also then got the latter game. It's really nice when they do this, when they put like a blockbuster. They have the double ups on Saturday. They have a blockbuster game of Collingwood, Geelong, and then the second game is Melbourne versus West Coast. Like, I would love to see the viewership numbers for both of these games, and I think I know which one is going to trounce the other one. And for some reason, the AFL again always start the games at the exact same time. So whenever there's an ad break or a quarter time at one game, it's probably going to be quarter time at the other game. I keep telling them. You need to stagger these games so that when you have quarter time, you can switch over to the other game. But anyway, whatever. What do I know? Sydney versus GWS is our first game of Sunday, and that is at SCG. So it's a Sydney derby, but it's actually at the SCG. I'm gonna pick GWS. It's really hard for me to tip Sydney.
I was gonna say Sydney.
Okay.
But I don't know. Again, if they lose that, like the alarm bells are ringing.
I mean, alarm bells are already ringing. So, I'm gonna tip GWS. The next game is Hawks versus Richmond. I think we both know that Hawks are going to win that game. And then the last game of the round, which is an absolute cracker to finish it off. Like, wow. Is it a public holiday the next day everywhere in the country for May Day, or is it just Queensland?
I know it's certainly Queensland.
I think it's just Queensland because I remember last year this game, people were like, why is it happening at 7:30 on a Sunday? And it's like, oh, because it's a public holiday in Queensland. So anyway, I might have my facts wrong there, but this is going to be a cracking game nonetheless and a hugely important game for both these teams. A bit of a, how do you describe it? Like a marker, like, oh, is this going to be one of the best ones? Like, are you going to be a good team this year? That sort of thing. So we'll find out a lot about these teams in this game. And man, I'm just going to tip the Lions. I'm just going to have to tip the Lions.
Of course, it's got to be the Lions. At
Go
the
the
Gabba.
Lions.
Got
Go
to
the
get their job
Lions
done.
at the Gabba. So that is a wrap up of round 7. A little preview to round 8 of the AFL season. Have you kind of, I guess, overall, you've been enjoying the footy? Like some of the games have been really good. I think that it's been a great season so far.
Yeah, I would prefer if more games were closer in terms of scoreline. We have
Yeah.
had a lot of games that are sort of at that 20, 30 point margin. We've
Yeah.
had a lot of blowouts.
Yeah.
So it's always better when games are decided by 10 points or less. Kind of like how that, Carlton Geelong game was, very fiercely contested,
Yeah.
even though the scoreline ended up being 18 points. But, like I said, the footy, I've enjoying it so far this season, and long may it continue.
That's a good way to finish off this episode. And thank you again to everyone for watching. Really do appreciate it. If you want to leave us any feedback, give us a comment, like the video as well. Please subscribe to the channel, and we will continue all of these throughout the year and through the finals as well. So really do appreciate everybody. Thank you so much again to Caleb for joining me, and we will see you at round 8 of the AFL season. Have a good day.